down to fight, then let's start the strike.
Welcome to Shut It Down, the Amazon Teamsters podcast. I'm your host, Randy Corrigan, the director of the Amazon division at the International Brothers of Teamsters. What does it take to stand up to one of the most powerful companies on the planet? This is where we talk about how workers are doing it every single day. On today's show, what you're going to experience is not only workers fighting and winning, but you're going to hear real stories from Ana Ortega and Maggie Perez. They work at KSBD in San Bernardino, which is one of the largest air hubs in the system for Amazon and is the largest in the West. They work here in the Inland Empire, like millions of other workers across this country in the warehouse and transportation industry. I am very familiar with this industry. I came out of this industry as a teenager. I started working on the docks. But the difference today versus then is the working conditions have really changed, and not in a good way. It's harder for workers to buy a home. It's harder for workers to win gains where their heat that they have to deal with at work, or the conditions in which are making it very difficult for them to come to work every day or stay employed at a particular employer in this industry, are getting more and more difficult. And unfortunately, corporations like Amazon aren't listening unless workers are doing this. I want you today to listen to their success, and listen to how they built worker power over and over again and achieved changes on the job. Enjoy the conversation. Today we have Ana Ortega and Maggie Perez. We are joined today by two Amazon Teamsters at KSBD in San Bernardino. I am so impressed with these individuals. I'm so impressed with the work that's been done out at KSBD. We'll get into a little bit more of that here in a few, but I want to just give a quick kind of overview of what we're going to cover today. Clearly, KSBD is a better place to work today than it was a few years ago. And the reason for it has been because of the unfair labor practice strikes that have occurred, the demands for recognition, the demands for change on the floor, building worker power, teaching workers that we have the right to withhold our labor. We have the legal right to withhold our labor. We have a First Amendment right to withhold our labor. The fact that we're teaching others to exercise that right is powerful in itself. And then when they do exercise it, you get to see a dramatic change. Ana, why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your job, and then we'll get into questions.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ana Ortega. I am 26 years old, born and raised in San Bernardino, living in Inland Empire my entire life. Raised by a single woman, and I really did see her struggle to provide what she did for me and my brother. And at an early age, I learned the importance of community, and being there for people and asking for help. And so, yeah, I started working at Amazon KSBD in June of 2021.
And for those that don't know, KSBD is an air hub, right?
Yes, an air hub, the largest Amazon air hub on the West Coast. And so I went in, as a young person who prided herself in doing a good job at, what I was tasked with. My management there, kind of saw that and started asking me to take on extra responsibilities in the guise of like ultimately being promoted within the management. And it was something that I liked because it was fun to kind of help out and understand a little bit better about the process. But after a few months of me doing a lot of extra responsibilities, kind of almost essentially having to act as a supervisor with, no compensation, sometimes not even so much as a thank you at the end of the day, it was starting to get to me. And then, they kind of started asking me to watch my coworkers a little bit more. And that really made me uncomfortable because that's, not what I was there to do. And so around the holiday season of 2021, because we are in an air site specifically, we closed for 3 days over the Christmas holidays. And then I think it was 3 more for the New Year's holidays. So a lot of my coworkers were negatively impacted by that because management didn't really give us a heads up. So people weren't able to plan to work overtime or, do anything else that they needed to get that money they would have normally gotten from working.
Especially at a time when, you know,
exactly.
it's Christmas. It's the holiday season when you got a lot of money going on.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, it was so bad for one of our coworkers that they ended up living in their car with their kids for a few months because they lost the deposit. And that was just really heartbreaking to hear, you know, working for one of the largest companies in the world. It's devastating to hear that their workers are struggling as much as we are. And again, just going back to the way I was raised, right? 20 years ago, watching my mom work multiple jobs to provide for her family and watching my coworkers have to do the same thing today to provide for their families. And that just doesn't seem right with, you know, it's never sat right with me. But so yeah, holiday season, lots of people were negatively impacted. A few of my coworkers got together, you know, they started talking about their issues and kind of what they've been seeing at the facility and kind of took that closure as an opportunity to start something very strong and, you know, powerful to this day that we're still up and running. They started circulating a petition asking our coworkers to sign it. They were asking for back pay for the holiday closures. And, you know, to be notified next time. There was some other safety issues.
So let's pump the brakes real quick. You're telling me that they shut down the operation for multiple days in two of the most expensive weeks of the year for anybody who's celebrating the holiday season. And that was without pay, right?
Without pay. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm assuming that negatively impacted everybody working in the operation.
Yeah. Some people weren't. Like, I specifically wasn't impacted just because of the shift that I specifically worked the days weren't affected. But yeah, there was plenty of other of my coworkers that were affected by that. And so, yeah, that reminds me, one of the other really big demands on that petition was basically changing that policy. So anytime that there's a site closure, it has to be paid. There can minimum be only 1 day unpaid.
Yeah, because if you're going to shut it down, my earning capacity is completely eliminated.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't like they were giving you holiday pay, right?
No, not at the time.
They make it sound that way at the time, but that's not what they were doing.
Yeah.
Let's shift real quick, Maggie. Why don't you introduce yourself, Maggie?
Yeah, my name is Maggie Perez. I also work at KSBD. I work on the ramp, so I work.
So you're out in the open air. You deal with the cold. You deal with the wind. You deal with the fires.
The heat.
The heat
right now, yeah. And I work, you know, hand in hand with the aircraft. My story is a little different from Anna's. Initially, I heard about the petitions and all of that, and I was a little hesitant to like join on and push forward. I just kind of stood back and was always like, no, I'm not interested type of thing. Until one day, one of my really good friends got fired for a reason that a lot of other people are doing the same actions and they're not disciplined in any way other than just like a verbal. And that really upset me. And then I said, you know what? I started noticing, hey, they have been making changes around here. We have heat. We have, for our heat protections, we have shade. We have misters.
You didn't start out having that?
No, not at all. There was nothing out there but the aircraft and us.
You mean that stuff didn't magically appear?
No.
According to Amazon, it was their idea.
Yeah, no, that's not how it worked. My coworkers marched on the bosses, got petitions going. They fought for that stuff, and, you know, hand in hand, Amazon had their hands tied. They couldn't do anything about it. We were like, if you don't give us this, we refuse to work. And if we refuse to work, your freight doesn't go out. Packages don't get delivered. So, you know, they put up shade, they put up cooling boxes. I mean, they've done some really good things, but only because we fought for it, you know? And I started seeing those things little by little, and I'm like, I got a little curious. I'm like, okay, let's see what this is really about. Then I started, you know, talking to some coworkers, talking to some people, asking questions. And then I said, you know, I think I can get down with this. I think worker power really does work, you know?
You guys realize that you are an inspiration to millions of other work. Like, millions of people have seen your videos, have watched the demand that you did last year when you demanded for recognition. I think that one TikTok video was like somewhere around 15, 18 million, or we lost count after it got above 10 million. We were like, oh my goodness. And that means that workers that do the exact same job that you do, or maybe they have it better and maybe they work at, let's say, UPS or some other place. What's happening is they're empathizing with your conditions. They're recognizing that, man, you know, Amazon could do better and probably should do better. I hope you guys realize the gravity of the inspiration that you are on all these people. Do you realize that you guys are kind of like your heroes? You're working class heroes every single day out there.
Yeah, I don't really see it as being a hero. Like it is for us. It's for the benefit of all of us, and I don't see it as being a hero. Like if they look up to us, that's great. That's amazing. And that's kudos to doing what we've done. But like as a hero, I don't really see it as that. I think we're just doing what's right. Right. And
that's good. And I appreciate that you're being humble, but if you take working conditions that are pretty tough and you're able to improve them, even if you're just ratcheting it one step, that's good. And then if it's misters and it's shade and then it's water and then it's this and it's that and it's getting holiday pay or a policy to have notification or making sure that we're getting paid for certain situations that otherwise we weren't. Now what's happening is those incremental changes that you're chipping away at, I don't know, they start to move into hero status. I appreciate that you don't want to say that, but man, millions of people are inspired by what you're doing and they're doing the same thing. You see them on other parts of the country, right?
Yeah.
So, that's okay. Maybe it's a little heroic, right? In all seriousness, really, just on behalf of everybody that's following you, thank you so much. What's the biggest reason each of you is doing it? What was the biggest impact? I think, Maggie, you said somebody got terminated close to you and it kind of pushed you over the edge.
Right. She wasn't just, obviously we started as coworkers, but we grew relationship and we became really good friends. And when she was fired, it was upsetting. And, they did a march on the boss on her behalf, and that's what pushed me over the edge because that really opened my eyes to like Amazon can just really like disregard us like yesterday's trash, essentially, and not care the impact that it has on our lives. No warning, no nothing. From one day to the next, you're there, and then the next day you're gone.
For me, at the time, I was still very like sold on that. My supervisors, my managers would get me promoted, by continuing to help them. And at the time, I definitely saw, getting involved, potentially jeopardizing that. But what was really a turning point for me was seeing my coworkers be strong and powerful and win the demands on that first petition. I remember sitting there during this site meeting, they got up, took the microphone, started asking these really great questions and just seeing management scramble to try to get the microphone away from them so that they could stop asking these questions. I remember just sitting there thinking, wow, these people are really powerful.
You were inspired by their activity.
Yes.
You were inspired by their kind of chipping away in that step happening, the extra step happening.
Yeah. And I just remember feeling very inspired. I went home that day and I went over to my best friend's house who, her dad is a Teamster. He's been a long time Teamster and he just always painted a really good image in my head about what a good union job can provide for someone in their family. So I went to him with questions. I told him what they had done, what they had said, how management reacted. And, he gave me some tips and I went back in there with the intention to take the tips that he gave me and talk to the coworker who initially asked me to sign that first petition, which I declined.
And you've been off and running ever since, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. I think for me too, it was really important to understand that this is our right. We do have rights as workers in this country and we should utilize them. You
feel like that's part of the hesitation with others is that they're not quite sure if they're grounded in their rights fully. They're fully immersed in it. In other words, what we found statistically is that workers they're just not confident because it's not taught in school, even though it's your right, even though there's plenty of law to protect your rights on the job. And they've been gained by other workers, ironically, doing the same thing that you're doing in a lot of cases, much more assertive fashion. But that lack of confidence from the workforce kind of is purposeful by corporate America to where people just don't feel, their feet aren't strong in this foundation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that what led to that hesitation? And do you think others are kind of in that space?
I would agree. And I think so.
How confident are you now that you've gone through so many victories?
Oh, I'm very confident. I walk in there with my head held high.
Yeah,
I'm,
shoulders kind of up a little higher, right? Yeah, you just like, you're not afraid of management.
No,
clearly.
No, not at all.
Why is that?
Because I'm in there doing my job. I'm performing my job duties as I should be. I keep myself safe. I keep my coworkers safe. And I really think that that's all it is to it. you know?
And working hard.
Yeah.
Maggie, let's talk about that hesitation and then kind of how you got over the hump and then you've been on fire ever since. Cause you spoke at the AB 288 hearing in Sacramento too.
I did.
You went from like 0 to 100. Like you kind of were like hanging on the edge for a while. And then all of a sudden, once you put your feet in, clearly once you're committed to something, you're all in. So let's talk about where that hesitation started and how you switched through it.
Yeah. My hesitation was basically like Amazon's such a huge corporation, right? And like, this is how I thought in the past. What's a few little workers gonna do? Amazon's not gonna move because you tell them to move, right? And I just thought like, I'm just here to earn my check and go home type of thing. I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want a target on my back. And I just was like, it's not going to work. I really had that mentality that it wouldn't work. I guess I was ignorant to the fact that worker power does work. And I just was uneducated in that area. I didn't really realize how strong we can be if we were together and how like we can really make Amazon bend to our needs and our demands. So I just was like, I didn't want to hear anything. It's like when people would ask me to sign a petition or they would say, hey, like, you know, we're going to do this. What do you think about it? And I'm just like, don't involve me. I don't want anything to do with it. And then, like I said, when my good friend got fired, I saw how unfair things were. And I started realizing too, little by little, like I saw the favoritisms happening and the little things that Amazon would do that I'm just like, that's not right. Because this isn't my first rodeo and I've worked a lot of years in other places and but I just kind of ignored it. And I'm like, they pay my paycheck. Like, I really can't say much type of thing. You know, that's kind of like the attitude I had. And then I started realizing that these things were working. I started seeing differences, you know, like I was telling you, the shade and the misters and those kind of things. And I'm like, I know Amazon isn't just giving us that because they want to be nice guys, right? Like it just, that's not how it works.
You know, and I think what this does, I know what it did for me when I first started to learn this process and how powerful it was, is it made me appreciate what others did before us for us to have any rules or you know, just the basic weekend, 40-hour week, overtime, right? Like all these things that are kind of there that we take for granted in our current setting is just the basics. Workers absolutely did the same thing you're doing for you to inherit that one day, right? Like that's what made me realize that, hey, when I rolled into this job at 18 years old, there was all this kind of good stuff. And I was like, well, how did it come about? And after a couple years, it really set in that workers, they really threw down. Like they some pretty crazy sacrifice for us to have a little piece of that action, right? In some cases, it's more than others. But what you're doing is you're taking that next step to elevate it up. Because if we leave it to corporate America, we obviously know they're not going to give it they're not just going to say, hey, here you go. Here's the misters. Here's the fans. Because clearly you sat in a front row seat and watched workers capture those victories. And it's got to be interesting for you to witness Amazon deny that. In other words, and it's almost like disrespect, right? Like, well, it is disrespect. You, front row seat, watched workers make the change and then turn around and listen to Amazon say the things that they say. And let me give you a couple points that I think really stood out last December was when Amazon was denying the drivers being their employees. You know, you're talking 3-4 days of media coverage that the media cycle was completely talking about it. And everybody in the country, millions of people are like, this doesn't make any sense that Amazon is saying they're not our drivers, but they got an Amazon uniform in an Amazon van, Amazon equipment coming out of an Amazon building. And y'all know the story. I don't need to get into it. It's clearly completely Amazon's operation, even though they want to say, oh, those aren't ours. So this constant iteration of Amazon in different ways, saying or denying where things were actually achieved is a bit disrespectful, but also empowering because they don't want to give you credit. If they give you credit, then they think more workers are going to join in. Well, little do they know, this movement's growing. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yes.
How does that make you feel to be part of something like that?
Amazing. Amazon is the biggest company around. Like it's crazy that they don't want to like pay us what we deserve or give us the time that we deserve and treat us just like basic humans. You know, they treat us like a number there. And so I feel like that was a huge one for people. Like we deserve better. and you guys can give it to us. You're just choosing not to. And so just based off that principle alone, like, I'm going to withhold my labor and you're going to feel it.
You know what concerns me on this point? Let's just talk economics for just a brief second, because what I love about all of the things that you're saying, you're talking more about working conditions. Obviously, you want more pay, you want better benefits. All those things are definitely something that should and need to be improved. But what's powerful here is you're talking more about the working conditions, individuals being disciplined. But I'm gonna shift over to the money side of things. One of the reasons why I decided to move into this direction and help workers at Amazon is because when I was a teenager, I saw how much money the industry paid. And I knew I could buy a home very quickly upon getting a job in the industry. And we've mapped out now, if you're 18 years old, you go to work at an Amazon facility, or let's say, a driver, or in any way in Amazon's network, you can't afford to buy a home. When? You
Never.
can't. But if you go to work at UPS, if you're a UPS package car driver, you work in the hub, you're full-time, work full-time hours. The best comparison I can use is a UPS driver delivers to every neighborhood in America. So does an Amazon driver, correct? A UPS driver can afford to buy a home in almost any one of those neighborhoods. The Amazon driver can't afford to buy in any neighborhood. As a matter of fact, it's statistically, anybody who goes to work for Amazon starting off their career, let's say the best example is 18, 19, wherever the facility is, whether it's an air hub or a driver or a fulfillment center or sortation, when can they afford to buy a home in the neighborhood close to where they're working? So the economic impact that Amazon is making on this industry is very problematic. It's problematic for not only millions of workers, but even millions more within the community around it that it serves. Because guess what? Amazon's not living in good principle, let's say economic principles for the community, making sure that, hey, we employ, let's say 10,000 or 15,000 employees in this particular area. And we're proud of the fact that all these people are going to be able to buy homes and buy cars and buy goods and services in the area and keep money circulating through the local economy. Instead, what's happening is corporate America, and Amazon in this case, is just pulling out billions of dollars out of the system. And so hearing you talk about the principles in which you're standing on, for myself coming out of the industry, one of the reasons I'm so inspired by your work is we're seeing organizing in its purest form happen. And you're talking to someone who's been organizing for over 30 years. I've helped tens of thousands of workers go from being non-union to now being Teamsters and dues paying members. Seeing you start to chip away, build your union internally, as much as Amazon wants to try to push you back, ignore all the legal processes, everything that they do to just basically throw up these obstacles, you're still winning. That's worker power. That's how unions were built. That's how the middle class was built. That's how the working class was built. And hearing you talk about the principles in which you're anchoring in makes it all the more powerful. It's not just, oh, let them throw $5 an hour at me and I'll tune out and go away. You guys realize it's more than just a few bucks. Talk a little bit more about that, Anna.
Being born and raised in this region, in this area,
Corporate America's taken advantage of this region, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've just sucked so much out.
I'm offended, that they come to areas like this and they tell the people in these areas that they don't deserve to earn a living wage, to
buy a home,
to not have to work more than 40 hours a week. It's outrageous. And at the end of the day, we're not asking for anything outrageous. We just want to be able to live comfortably, I can't afford to live in an apartment, much less buy a house, right? I live at home with my mom, and I don't know when that's going to change. I couldn't afford to move out with her as it stands now.
And you've had 4 unfair labor practice strikes to start to move the needle. Congratulations to you that since 2022, 4 times you guys have walked off the job and started to push that needle. How does that make you feel, being part of not only agitating, but part of the success, and also knowing that there's a lot more, there's a bigger hill to climb coming?
Yeah. Definitely, it's amazing. Like Maggie said, to work with our coworkers and see them kind of grow themselves, and
Them be inspired themselves.
yeah,
Their
exactly.
confidence.
Exactly. The camaraderie you feel when you go on strike lines, and people that not necessarily aren't my coworkers, but understand the fight, understand the importance of, us in general, even outside of our jobs, standing united with each other.
Others in the industry.
Yeah.
In other words, workers that work in other warehouses or work for other companies, work for UPS, work for, the union facilities, joining you, walking the picket line, helping you, willing to do whatever it takes. That's kind of the community itself. Elected leaders grabbing a picket sign and walking the picket line with you.
Yeah. And so it's very inspiring, and always just helps me remember to my core, when times get tough, why I'm fighting, why I got involved, and what I want to see change, not just for our coworkers, for the region. I want to see better by this company.
Maggie, how did it feel to go on strike?
Amazing. I had never been on strike before, and
you were probably a little concerned as you're kind of getting to the road, right? A little bit,
maybe, but I was
you're already
confident. I was super confident, really. My first strike was this last one that we went on in December. So like I hadn't partaken in the other strikes previous. So I was pretty confident walking into that strike, and just walking out there and just like all the support, right? Not just from each other, not just from my coworkers, but like Anna was saying, from people from outside of Amazon that they don't really know us. They do know about the fight that we're facing, and for them to be there, like that means a lot. And that just goes to show that this is a huge thing that needs to be dealt with. And us being there together was amazing.
You did a really great job of outlining some of the heat that covers and the misters and water and all that good stuff. But you're also at the forefront of the wage theft fight.
Yes, that was another one.
You guys this is phenomenal. Obviously, Amazon didn't volunteer this. This is something internally you all realized that you were being shorted the compensation on that third break. And now hundreds of thousands of dollars have been put back into workers' pockets. How's that make you feel to be in front of a wage theft issue where one of the biggest corporations in the world is literally stealing out of working people's pockets?
Yeah, that was such a great feeling when people started getting paid. When those checks started rolling in, the looks on like my coworkers' faces, and just the appreciation that they showed,
and some of them thousands of dollars.
Right. I myself was one of those people, and just the appreciation that they showed and came up personally to me and was like, "Hey, thank you so much for letting me know about this, because I had no idea." And they owed me $3,000, $5,000, and I didn't even realize it, and that just makes you feel good inside. We're doing something here. We are making changes here, and nobody can take that from us, not even Amazon.
Workers are not backing down. And I think that's what's so powerful about this, and hearing your words yourself at how, regardless of what obstacle they may throw up, you're throwing at you. You're taking that next step. You're chipping away at it, and you're throwing down, and you're saying, here's how we keep growing it. Here's how we keep moving it. Here's the next thing we knock off the list and work towards. Now, talk about how you feel in making that next step with even more workers the next time you guys draw the line in the sand.
Excited, super excited, because I know what's to come, I guess. And so to have that feeling again
makes you kind of giddy up.
Yeah, it does. It does. And obviously it's going to take a minute, but we're only getting stronger by the day. And
you know what gets you stronger? I'm just going to point this out to you. The reason why your KSBD fight is so amazing and incredible is that regardless of what Amazon decides to do to break the law, or to try to create obstacles, or to try to get in front of you, or try to dissuade people, you guys chip away, and you're realizing there's more and more of you every day. They're realizing by withholding your labor, by making that sacrifice, you're actually moving the needle a little further. And the more that withhold their labor, and imagine 100,000 workers in, let's say, the Inland Empire on the same day, just not going to work.
Wow.
The employer's going to have to make changes like you're talking about, right? What we're doing is we're helping workers understand they have the right to. And that's the bridge. Right now, workers have all the power. It's whether or not they exercise it. And what you all are doing is you're showing the roadmap, and everybody's seeing it. Just like you, what got you over the hump is you realized those actions and those activities moved the needle. It chipped it away. And then now what's the next thing? And then more people get involved. And then an even better accomplishment and then a better one. And these are, to be straight, these are all temporary fixes. The permanent fix is getting it in a collective bargaining agreement, right?
Yeah.
And Amazon can come in and say, okay, we're going to change everything. We're going to give you all the things that you want. Awesome. Now put it in writing. Make a commitment to the people that work here. Get people to a position to where they can afford to buy homes in the very neighborhood in which they're working in. That's what you guys are fighting for, isn't that?
Yeah.
And how's that make you feel knowing that you're going to impact millions more workers to do the same thing?
It does make you feel a little bit like a superhero. Yeah.
So is it Batman, Robin?
The latest Superman? Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That was a really good movie.
It's good. Right.
But no, yeah, I think it's incredibly inspiring, and to me, something that I always say, it's like not a matter of if, it's when. And so
That's right.
when we reach that point, it's going to be beautiful to see, and we're going to make changes just like, all of the people that came before us did.
How about you, Maggie, as we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Anna. I guess it does kind of feel like a superhero type thing.
See, at first you started to argue with me.
I know, but like I didn't think of it in that aspect.
Because you're humble and you're empathetic and you recognize that people are struggling.
Yeah, I try to be, and so to see that change. And like Anna said, not if, but when that change happens, because we're not going to stop until it does happen.
Right.
We're going to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing until it does. It's going to be really self-fulfilling and rewarding at the same time, not just for myself, but for everybody.
And it is because you've already started to feel a little bit of that along the way, right? As tough and challenging as it is, you felt it already. And the one thing that I always explain to workers is you've already won. You're in every part of the operation. You control the way everything works. If you all just withhold your labor, guess what? The employer is going to have to agree. Just be reasonable. Just be reasonable. And I'm telling you, you're not unreasonable. When I started in this industry at 18 years old, I was able to buy a house within a couple of years. I was able to buy a house. Now, others will argue economic factors. Okay, if you got one of the wealthiest corporations on the planet, they can afford to pay you enough to buy a home in the very community you're working in. This is unacceptable, and something needs to be done. And the only way that a company like this is going to pay attention is when you shut it down, because that's what's moving the needle. Closing remarks, Maggie, and I'll get to you, Anna.
Continue to fight, continue to step up, continue to stand your ground. Don't be afraid of Amazon's words, because that's all they are, words.
Anna, any closing words?
Yeah, I would definitely say to the people out there listening, educate yourself and join the fight. It's going to take a lot of us waking up and realizing that when we come together, we absolutely do hold all the power. And, Amazon wouldn't have gone as big as they did if it wasn't for all of their workers.
Workers across America have the power. Workers, whether they're in San Bernardino or Los Angeles or New York, or it doesn't matter where they are, they hold the power. Corporate America wants us to feel as if we don't have that power. You are taking it back. Exactly what you're doing. You're showing the movement and how it wins. You're showing how to fight back, how to fight for your rights, and how to educate one another. Thank you for all the hard work you do every single day. And are you going to shut it down?
Hell
Yes.
Are you going to teach some others how to do it?
Hell yeah.
Coming soon. Signing off. What an incredible conversation we just had with Maggie and Anna from KSBD San Bernardino, Amazon Teamsters from KSBD San Bernardino. It was incredible to hear how they were able to chip away and be successful. And then the camaraderie of other workers, not just whom they worked around, but also other workers in the industry. And then to see there were specific incidents and situations, whether it was making sure they had shade or misters and fans and water accessible to deal with heat conditions or cold conditions, in addition to other things that were impacting them in the workspace. To see the evolution of that, to see workers slowly build worker power, slowly organize and move to the next step. And as a reminder, you can always visit us on teamster.org/Amazon. At any point, you can go there and you can connect to what's going on digitally, and to recognize the fact that these workers at KSBD, thousands of workers across the entire country, being followed by millions of other workers who would either withhold their labor or do petitions or do things that brought awareness to their supervisors and bosses and chip away and make progress step by step over and over again. It's an absolute inspiration to be joined by Maggie and Anna and know that they represent millions of other workers in the exact same space. And one of the other things I heard from the two of them is principle. The principle of why they're in this space. It's not just about a few more bucks. It's also about how workers are being treated and holding a big corporation accountable that can clearly afford to pay people to a level that they can buy a home, buy goods and services in the area. This episode was phenomenal. I believe you're going to get the same out of it that everybody else is going to tell us, and that is they're going to be inspired to do the same thing right in their facility, right in their backyard. Thanks for joining us.
It's time to fight. If you down to fight, then let's start the strike. Corporate greed is disgusting. Instead of us, they rather pay for union busting. Somebody said the working man a sucker. They took the stand and ran like a high jumper. Teamsters Local 804, we not having that. We gon' stand here and fight for fair contract. Fair wages on the table.